Is it visible to all?
No,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
No,
Not visible.
Here's what I found.
My screen is visible to all or not?
Not
No,
no,
visible.
sir.
sir. No, sir.
We've seen that from
Now is it visible?
Yes,
Yes, sir.
sir.
Okay. So today, first of all, we'll discuss about the learning and cognitive behaviors in animals. So first of all, what is learning? We should know about this. Basically, learning is a change in behavior as a result of experience, allowing animals to adapt to the environment. Why there is a system of learning? Learning is there to adapt itself, or organism adapt itself with the changing environment. We all know that environmental constant is the change, or we can say it as environment is not static, it is dynamic in nature. So organism in dynamic environment, to adapt itself or himself, it has to learn something from the environment. Otherwise, it is difficult for the organism to survive in the environment. This is a cartoon picture, is there for learning purpose. And cognitive behavior is what? It relates to the mental process. What we learn, after learning, what we observe, then after observation, what kind of processes or what kind of interpretation is going on, that comes under the cognitive behavior. So cognitive behavior relates to the mental process involved in acquiring knowledge and understanding. So this is the basic definition point of these two, learning and cognitive behavior. Okay. So the first thing in learning pattern, we will discuss about the imprinting. Just look at the pictures at the right side. These are different kinds of pictures are there. So first of all, we have to understand what is imprinting. Imprinting, the objective of imprinting is the animal from a strong bond with fast moving object. That means from where animals learn, animal basically learn from its parent. For those animals which are newborn organism, their parents are the fast moving objects for those organisms. That's why always the offsprings or the newborn follow the parent's pattern. What kind of action is performing by the parent, that is followed by the newborn. In this picture, you can see this, how the mother is moving, which kind of food the mother is eating, which kind of swimming pattern the mother is following, which is the path of movement, everything is followed by these newborns. So this kind of behavior is known as imprinting behavior. So what are the characteristics of imprinting behavior? The first characteristic is specific time period. That means when these newborns, in human case also, when the new babies are growing, they first follow their mother or father, but first they follow their mother. for certain period of time, up to certain years, up to certain months, for that only. So the first characteristic, that imprinting occurs during a specific time period, which is known as the sensitive phase. That's why we are saying that at this phase, taking care is very essential, because this is the learning phase, this is the imprinting phase. What kind of impression you can create, that impression can last long for many years or for till the death. That's why that is very essential. Second characteristic, it is highly resistant to extinction. What is the meaning of this? If these newborns, they do not follow the mother's pattern, they do not follow the first moving object pattern, what will happen? They undergo extinction, because their mother know how to grab the food, their mother know how to protect them. If they do not follow the mother's opinion, if they do not follow the mother's path, then that leads to their extinction, that leads to their complete eradication from the nature. That's why that is the second characteristic, highly resistant to extinction. Third, is seen mainly in birds. Most of the birds, they are following this pattern. And the fourth one is, it influences species specific behavior, like recognition of parents, con species. That means in different species, different type of imprinting we are finding. Okay, so these are very important pattern of learning process. Certain examples of imprinting, that is filial imprinting and sexual imprinting. Filial imprinting means that chicks follow the mother. That means the newborn follow the mother. That is the pattern. It is known as the filial imprinting. Sexual imprinting, that means when they become the adult, the animals learn species specific mating calls. That means same species mate with the same individual. That means male, female of same species, they only can. Otherwise, mating is not possible. Sexual intercourse is not possible. Okay. So these are different kinds of imprinting. Is it clear to all? Are you getting my point?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So why imprinting is essential? The importance of imprinting, it is essential for survival. With both organismal survival as well as reproductive success, imprinting is very essential. Next. Another pattern of this learning is habituation. Habituation means decrease in response to a repeated begin stimulus over time. That means if you are facing any kind of situation, you become familiar to that situation, or you lose your fearness to that situation. That is the habituation. In our case also, in other animal case also, both human being and other animals, their habituation means they develop certain characteristic against the object which they face regularly. That kind of mechanism is known as habituation. So mechanism means it helps organism or animals ignore irrelevant stimuli, conserving energy for more critical response. Okay. So if we discuss about the animal habituation, here just look at this picture. In first picture, the crows present in cornfield. The second picture, what introduced? It introduced scarecrows. The third picture, and the second picture you can find, when scarecrow is introduced, the crows start moving away from the field. But when they face the scarecrow every day, that means they become familiar with the scarecrow. They use their fearness to the scarecrow. They develop certain characteristic, familiar characteristic with the scarecrow. So they stop responding to the scarecrow after repeated exposure. That is the process of habituation mostly found in different organisms. The adaptive value, it has a great adaptive value. Adaptive value means it prevents animals from overreacting or non-threatening stimuli. When organisms, particularly the birds, start overreacting, that means they are using more energy, which is very bad for them. For overreacting, if the bird is using more energy, then energy is very less, become very less for other purposes. That's why to conserve the energy, they develop habituation. So this is all about the habituation.
Sir, benign to stimulus triggers are present.
Is there any doubt?
Sir, benign stimulus.
Not audible to me again.
Sir, definition of
I think it's not audible to me. Have you any doubt in definition? So again, I am saying the definition describes the decrease in response to repeated benign stimulus over time. Repeated benign stimulus. That means the stimulus which is the stimulus which is benign means it is fixed to a confined area. That means you will get that stimulus repeatedly, one time after another time. That kind of stimulus is known as benign stimulus, which is repeated manner, which is fixed to a particular place. If we are discussing about the scarecrow, the benign means the scarecrow is fixed to a particular point, and repeatedly the bird will face the scarecrow, which develop the process of habituation. I think this is clear to all.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
sir.
Yes,
Or
sir.
any other confusion? Okay. So next is associative learning. To associative learning, we'll discuss about two conditioning. The first conditioning is the classical conditioning. So what is classical conditioning? For classical conditioning, there is a experiment performed by Pavlov, which is commonly called as Pavlov's experiment on dog. That means classical conditioning is learning by association where a natural stimulus becomes associated with a significant stimulus. That means certain, if we'll discuss about certain examples of this, you can understand it very well. Then after I'll discuss about this example, which pictorial presentation is in your slide. Loud noise. A loud noise can automatically trigger a startle response. If we'll get a loud noise every day and you are habituated with any kind of work according to that, or at the time of that loud noise, or you are doing any repeated manner work, you are studying, you are reading, you are running, anything, that loud noise on the next or very next day after a very uh, repeated exposure, you'll find that that loud noise will only provide certain triggerness to you for that work only, or will not feel better if there is no loud noise. That kind of action is the associative learning in classical conditioning. Smell of food. For certain food, we develop our hunger. That means when the food is nearer to us or that smell, we are uh, very close to the smell of this food, then our hunger will start, or that cause the hunger in our body. Here, Pavlov did an experiment on this part. What he did, at a particular time, he rang a bell, and at that time, the dog is facing, or the dog is eaten certain meat powders or any kind of dog funding, dog loving things. What happened? After some time, when he just for his experiment, he made this type of table, and on that tabletop, he kept some container and with meat powder, and the dog is just behind the container. What happened at that time when the bell was rang? The dog start producing saliva from its salivary gland. This is a kind of behavior. Pavlov concluded that this kind of behavior is the learning pattern. That means at that particular time when bell was rung, the dog knew himself that this is the time for the food. Then that start creating that start secreting the saliva. So these are different kind of conditioned stimulus. That means there is a condition, there is a stimulus. This is the first important part of this classical conditioning. Okay. In unconditioned, for the that is the unconditioned stimulus, and there is a response for the unconditioned stimulus. The dog experiment is the conditioned part, but that is the experiment of this classical conditioning. These examples are given: loud noise, smell of food, onion vapor. All these are the unconditioned. That means it generalized for all. And for that unconditioned response, there is a unconditioned learning, there is a unconditioned response. That means natural response to that unconditioned stimuli. An unconditioned response is an automatic involuntary reaction to stimulus that occur naturally and does not require prior learning. That means if you got onion vapor, you start tearing. That is the unconditioned reflex. That stimulus is there, that is for all. But if we are talking about the conditioned stimulus, it means it's a neutral stimulus that through repeated pairing with a biologically relevant stimulus come to trigger a response similar to response triggered by biologically relevant stimulus. The definition will be very clear when we'll go for the example. Just look at this example. When we are watching TV with tea, what happens in the very after certain exposure, repeated exposure, that we are watching repeatedly TV at that particular time with the teacup, then what will happen? If you watch TV, your favorite show with tea every night, the show will eventually trigger an association with having tea. That is the kind of conditioned stimulus. And for that conditioned stimulus, you will develop conditioned response, that is learned response to the conditioned stimulus. The example is fear of driving. If you'll see a very terrible car accident, that develops certain kind of fearness inside you, and in future you may start fearing of this driving. So these are different type of classical conditioning, and these are the important concept of this classical conditioning. Another important conditioning for this behavior is operant conditioning. One is classical conditioning, another is operant conditioning. It is learning process that user rewards and punishment to modify behavior. That means for doing certain work will get rewards, and for doing certain work will get punishment. So this kind of work is very essential. Why it is essential? We'll discuss its application part. Particularly for animal purpose, for animal training purpose, it is very important. So what is that? the behavior are voluntary and reversible. That means repeatedly, if you or the animal in accordance with the repeated behavior, that means the animal is become habituated with this behavior. And if at certain point the behavior or the action will not perform by the animal for certain days, that will be reversible. That is the condition of this operant conditioning. So what is the theory? B.F. Skinner first described operant conditioning in 1937, and there is a box known as Skinner's box. In later slide, we will discuss about this box. His theory was based on the idea that cause of human behavior is something in a person's environment. Every organism, not only human, every organism's behavior. So this behavior particularly depends upon certain conditioning, which is we'll discuss in application part, that operant conditioning has applications in addiction and dependence, animal training, applied behavior analysis, child behavior, economics, gambling, military, psychology, everything. If we'll
Sir, ବୁଝିବ sir ଶୁଭୁନି
Sir, not audible.
sir clear ଶୁଭୁନି
discuss about
Sir, can you repeat the operant conditioning again?
dogs training,
Sir, voice break ହଉଛି.
we have a lot of use.
Sir, your sound is not audible.
How this training is performed by using this operant conditioning system. When there is a reward is performed,
sir your voice is not audible
ଏବେ ମୋ ଭଏସ ଶୁଭୁଛି ସମସ୍ତଙ୍କୁ?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yes, sir.
ସ୍କ୍ରିନ୍ ଭିଜିବଲ ହଉଛି ସମସ୍ତଙ୍କୁ?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Classical conditioning, what explains to us? Classical conditioning explains that learning by association, where a neutral stimulus become associated with significant stimulus. That means when organism is facing any kind of environmental stimulus repeatedly or in the repeated manner, after some time, what he develops certain behavioral mechanism for that stimulus only. That is the basic point. And what are the important terms in this classical conditioning that we have to understand? That is unconditioned stimulus. That means when we'll go for the example like loud noise, a loud noise can automatically trigger a statile response. That means if the marriage party you are facing attending in any kind of marriage party and there is a DJ or anything, so automatically you will start, or that DJ sound will trigger certain physiological process within you. You may dance or do not dance, that is different, but that starts certain triggering action within your body. That kind is known as unconditioned stimulus. And for that unconditioned stimulus, there is a response known as unconditioned response. That means the response is common. Neutral response to unconditioned stimulus. The response is common. You are jumping when you hear a loud noise. That kind of action you are performing towards an unconditioned response. And for conditioned stimulus means there is a stimulus. If for the conditioned stimulus, you have to discuss this example that watching TV with tea. If daily you are watching your favorite serial with a teacup at a particular time, or maybe night before going to the bed, everything, you will after some time, what eventually will see that it triggers an association with having tea. That means over time, you might crave the tea every time the show starts. That will, the craving pattern will develop repeatedly by repeated watching TV show. So this is the conditioned stimulus. And for that stimulus, there is a response which is known as conditioned response. And this conditioned response is learned response to conditioned stimulus. That means there is fearness. If you are witnessing a terrible car accident, you might develop a fear of driving. That is very important. Okay. So this is the concept. Another important conditioning is the operant conditioning. And this operant conditioning, why it is important? Operant conditioning was first introduced by B.F. Skinner in an experiment in 1937. What is that operant conditioning? That is the learning process that uses reward and punishment to modify behavior. That means we are bribed to the organism to modify its behavior. Every organism, they are fond of for certain things. So, and they develop their fearness for certain things. So we are giving certain rewards, or we are giving certain punishment to the organism. That is the action plan for training of an organism. This operant conditioning is very essential for training of an organism. If we know the if an organism is addicted to any kind of food or any kind of other product, then that is also important. That is also very essential for its training purposes. That means organismal dependency to that product is very important. That kind of action coming under in operant conditioning. The drug training is very essential process for our day-to-day life, for detection of crime scene, for any other purposes also. Before some days, you got the news that certain dogs from our state, from our ODRAF team, they got some dead bodies, buried dead bodies from Kerala state after the devastating landslide. So these are the important pattern of this learning system, which is coming under the operant conditioning. This is the experiment by Skinner. This is the box. Here the picture is showing the box, and inside the box there is a mouse. When the mouse is pressing a particular lever, that is rewarded by certain food. But when the mouse is pressing another lever or the switch, that get certain punishment like a current charge. So these are different kind of actions. After that, the experiment is modified. After that, certain behavior pattern is modified. Okay, Skinner observed there is a modification of behavior pattern. So for this concept, some important words we have to remember, we have to mention, we have to describe. That first is positive reinforcement. That means adding a pleasant stimulus to encourage behavior. That means if we get that kind of positive response, then we love this action every time. That's why we follow this kind of behavior, this pattern of behavior. Negative reinforcement, removing an unpleasant stimulus. If we are not rewarding, if organism is not rewarding, then that remove that kind of stimulus. That means that is the removal of stimulus and organisms start doing this kind of action. Punishment and excitation also the part of this kind of behavior, which is known as operant conditioning. Up to this, I think you got some idea. Am I audible?
Yes,
Yes, sir.
yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Now we'll
Sir,
go for the cognitive learning theory.
सर
Yes.
सर विंटर रे सर जो आमे विंटर जो ड्रेस आमे जो पिंधुछु सेटा सर हमर कंडीशनल स्टिमुलस में जीवो ना अनकंडीशनल स्टिमुलस पर जीवो सेटा एग्जांपल दा
विंटर ड्रेस
विंटर आसले विंटर जो ड्रेस पिंधुछु
देखो सेटा कॉमन फॉर ऑल गोटे विंटर ड्रेस आमे कोन पिंधुचे टिके मते ए जो डिस्कशन उडा मु व्हाट्सएप रे मेंशन करले सेठी हमें टिके डिस्कशन करबा अदरवाइज हमें एठी डिस्कशन करले हमें ताको कवर करि परिबानी टाइम पीरियड भीतर
ओके सर
हमें से पैटर्न नो डिस्कशन डिफरेंट पैटर्न नो डिस्कशन टाको मते तमे पर्सनली मो नंबर अछि व्हाट्सएप रे मते कांटेक्ट भी करि परिबो तो हमें सेही टाइम रे डिस्कशन टाको शिफ्ट करि परिबा अदरवाइज ए स्टिपुलेटेड टाइम भीतर हमें सब डिस्कशन को जदी मूव ऑन करिवा तो मो सेही पई किछटा पर्टिकुलर एग्जांपल को साइट करिछि ताको नै कि हमें सेही पार्ट को डिस्कशन करिवा जे सेही पार्ट ता एक्चुअली ता भीतर आसुछि ना आसुनी तेनो मु भाबुछि सेही डिस्कशन टाको हमें टिके क्लास टाइम परे हो किबा अदर टाइम रे रखिबा
Okay, sir.
am I right?
ओके सर
Yes, sir.
Okay, definitely मु डिस्कशन करिवि बट मते टिके अदर टाइम मिलले मु निहाती डिस्कशन पार्ट को आसी. So cognitive learning theory is another important part of this animal behavior. So what is that cognitive learning theory? It is Metacognition. Metacognition defines what? Metacognition defines a style of learning that focuses on how the brain processes information and how it uses it more effectively. That means particular type of interpretation by our brain. If we interpret it in correct manner, then we can perform or we can act correctly. Otherwise, it is very difficult to act accordingly or according to the stimulus provided by the environment or any external source. So this theory originated in psychology and Western philosophy. Social cognition theory, the different ideas of this theory. First is social cognition theory. What this theory suggests? This theory suggests learning happens in social context and it is impacted by the person, environment, and behavior. Okay, so it is the example cited here. If an instructor who wants to provide a positive social experience with regular opportunities for students to see that learning is valued and that others around them are engaged in process will be successful. That means if your teacher daily provided certain positive ideas about learning, about your study, then definitely you'll get certain interest to your study. Maybe your instructor, maybe your teacher, maybe your surrounding society, anything. That is the social cognitive theory. Otherwise, if the surrounding will every time push you back towards or pull you back towards the point that this is study is very hectic, that is very painful, definitely from the beginning you will get certain bad ideas about your learning or study. Another pattern is behavioral cognition. That behavioral cognition argues that person's thought determines their action. If from the beginning stage it is your own behavioral status, that means if you think that I can do it, yes, you can do it. If from the beginning you'll think that I cannot do it, then that is very difficult for yourself, for your part to perform, to complete the action. That is the, or it will be very harder that you harder for your part to complete that work. That kind of behavior is the behavioral cognition. Okay, so these are two types of social cognition. One is society impact, another is behavioral cognition is your behavioral impact. So these are two important theories you have to mention in cognitive learning. So these are the processes of cognitive learning. So what are the processes particularly? From the very beginning in cognitive learning, I have explained that cognitive learning means the brain interpretation, how we interpret that action or the stimuli, what is provided to us, or organism, how the organism is interpreting the external stimuli, the natural stimuli. The first one, the first process of this cognitive learning is perception. Already we have discussed in previous class what is perception. It is interpretation of learning through the sensory experience. It involves recognizing the environmental stimuli along with your action. It is essential cognitive learning process as it processes information such as recognition, colleagues, faces, or actively listening during meeting. So this is very common to all, not need to describe a lot about this. Concept information also very familiar to us in our day-to-day life. If we are moving office, if we are moving schools, colleges, concept information in cognitive action, in example example, it is mentioned that resignation letter refers to an official document. But if you are writing a letter to mother, the pattern is different. That lacks this category of critical defining features. When you are writing a resignation letter, when you are writing, if we have certain experience, that means we have certain memory. And at last, the application, the cognitive learning advocates the application of interpreting information in current and future situation, which is very important in cognitive learning. So these are different processes of cognitive learning. These are different types of cognitive learning. Already many kinds of cognitive learning we have discussed in previous part. And next one is the latent learning. This latent learning defines what? It defines learning that is not immediately expressed in an overt response. It occurs without any obvious reinforcement of the behavior or association that are learned. Latent learning is not readily apparent to the researcher because it is not shown behaviorally until there is sufficient motivation. That means, what is actually the latent learning? In which a new behavior is acquired but not demonstrated until some incentive is provided for displaying. Just look at this path where the rat is moving. Just look at this path. The rat from very beginning, that exploring a maze, this is a maze without reinforcement, may later navigate it quickly when food is placed. Reinforcement is the reward. If there is no reward, the rat definitely will take more time to get the end. If there is reward, if there is certain food or rat loving substances, definitely or quickly the rat able to find the fastest path to the food, showing that latent learning had occurred during their time spent living in niche. The ending will be very faster. The end path will be very faster if there are certain foods or rat loving substances. But without reward, this is the reward for the rat. If without reward, the rat unable to find the path very quickly, that pattern of behavior is the latent learning pattern of behavior. So the characteristic of latent learning pattern, that the knowledge is acquired without immediate application or reinforcement. Learning that becomes apparent when there is an incentive to demonstrate it. It is applicable in most of the organism, in most of the animal, and it is very important in learning behavior. And this is the social learning. Social learning means when animal learn behaviors by observing and intimating others, often conspecifics. Conspecifics means the similar species, their own species. The characteristics, it plays a vital role in transmission of culture in some animal societies. Many involve imitation where they observe copies the exact behavior, or emulation where the example will be very clear to you. Young chimpanzees learn to use tools like sticks. They are holding certain sticks and they observe it from their ancestor, from the other species of that particular group, that they use the stick to extract termites by observing older. That is the behavior the new or the young one performing. That kind of behavior is known as social learning. It is also applicable to our case also. The newborn, the infant, the child, they start learning to the activities performing by the surrounding organism or the family members. They start doing that kind of activities in day-to-day life. We can observe that kind of activities by the newborns. Okay, so this all about learning. I think this part is over. Learning and cognitive behavior. We'll go for the next slide. So now we'll discuss about homeostasis and behavior. To learn this part, we have to first understand what is homeostasis. Homeostasis, all we know that it maintains a stable internal environment despite the changes present in external environment. That means a fixed body condition is maintained. In homeostasis mechanism, a fixed body condition or a constant body condition is maintained despite there is change in environmental status. In animals, behaviors play a crucial role in maintaining homeostasis. If we are not performing certain behavior, then homeostasis maintenance is very difficult. So, to maintain the homeostasis, we have to perform certain behavior. That's why interplay between behavior, motivation, hormonal regulation is central to this process. That means for maintaining homeostasis, these things are very important. So what are the regulations of homeostasis? There are importantly three regulations for homeostasis, that is effector, receptor, and control center. Just look at this picture. It is shown in right side, the receptor, control center, and effector. They are very essential. That means if you are getting certain change, that means that is the stimulus. The receptor help in receiving those stimulus and they send the message to the control center. Accordingly, the control center start interpreting what kind of change it is and what kind of action body has to take to mitigate those kind of stimulus. That's why that sends certain messages to the effector organ to take that kind of action. If we are talking about the temperature, outer temperature is rising, the body starts sweating. When outer temperature is rising, that means the receptors receive the stimulus that outer temperature is rising. Then that send the message to the brain, and the brain, the cutaneous receptors of skin, when send the messages to the control center, the brain start interpreting those signals, what kind of signals the skin receptors are sending. So after that, they send messages to every sweat gland present on the skin surface, start sweating to maintain the temperature. Inside and outside body temperature is different. That's why to maintain the inside body temperature, which is known as homeostasis, part of homeostasis, the control center sends certain signals. Okay, that is the mechanism. So what kind of behavior we are performing here? That means we have to move to certain place where we can reduce the external temperature, or to the setting place. That is the behavior we are performing to control the body fluctuation or the temperature fluctuation of our body. That is very important. So what is behavioral homeostasis? Behavioral homeostasis refers to action or activities of animals engaged to maintain internal psychological balance in response to external or internal stimuli. So mechanism follows what? Mechanism follows the behavior to cope with environmental fluctuation, such as changes in temperature, availability of food, presence of traits, all this kind of behavior we are performing to maintain homeostasis. Certain examples are cited here. If we are talking about thermoregulation, the ectothermic organisms like reptiles, the ectothermic means they are cold-blooded organisms, the poikilotherms. The reptiles bask in the sun to regulate body temperature. The desert animal, they follow the hydration mechanism like camel, seek water to reduce activity to conserve water in arid environment. Foraging behavior is also important to maintain the homeostasis. That means increased feeding behavior when energy reserves are low to maintain metabolic homeostasis. So all these kind of behavior are very important to maintain homeostasis. So why homeostasis is important? What is the significance of homeostasis? The significance is physiological, to maintain the physiological stability. Particularly to maintain the physiological stability, the homeostasis, behavioral homeostasis is very important. And it ensures at last the survival of the organism. If fixed body condition is not maintained, then organism unable to survive for a longer period of time. So different homeostasis behavioral patterns are there for organismal survivability. Then motivational system and their physiological basis also important. What is that motivational system? It is neural and physiological mechanism that drives an animal to perform behavior that fulfill its basic needs, such as food, water, reproduction, and safety. That is the protection pattern. Safety means the protection pattern. So motivation means animal engage in behavior because of internal or external stimuli that create a state of need or drive. This drive activates specific behavior that reduce the need and restore homeostasis. So what is physiological homeostasis? If we are talking about our hypothalamus plays an important role in regulating what? Hunger, thirst, sexual behavior, everything is maintained by this hypothalamus, because we all know that hypothalamus is regulating the action of pituitary, and pituitary control many function of our body. That means the homeostasis is controlled indirectly by this hypothalamus action. Certain neurotransmitter, hormonal influences also very important. If we are talking about hormonal influences to maintain it is very familiar to us. Everybody, we know the function of insulin. It regulates what? Blood glucose level. If insulin is not secreted, then blood glucose level is increasing, which is called as the hyperglycemia condition. The diabetes mellitus will increase. If insulin level is not secreting properly, or that secreting in a high amount, that leads to hypoglycemia condition. That means homeostasis is not maintained. Homeostasis is maintained by this hormone action. So there are different examples also present to maintain different homeostasis and physiological activities. When animal is dehydrated, osmoreceptor in the brain detect changes in blood osmolarity, that triggering thirst. If we are dehydrating, we need more water. Then thirst condition will be developed in our body to take more and more amount of water. That kind of action is performed by the body neural system. So these are different pictorial presentation, different type of motivation, intrinsic motivation, extrinsic motivation. So these are very peculiar structures for the motivation. And this is the concept of motivational conflict and decision making. When we have many paths, we have to choose one path that is also performed by certain animal in different behavioral pattern. That is the picture shows this kind of presentation. When there is motivational conflict, first we have to approach that one. Motivational conflict occurs when animal is facing with two or more competing drives or needs. The basic needs, if we have more needs, more basic needs, we have to choose. In general sense, in every sense, if we have more sources, then we have to choose one source. We have to choose the good source among them. So in animal behavior also, this kind of conflict is there. Conflict means you have to choose from many things. You have to choose from more than one things. Okay. So what kind of conflicts are there? Approach conflict, avoidance conflict, approach avoidance conflict. So first one is approach conflict. When an animal is motivated to pursue two desirable goals such as feeding and mating, both are important. So animal has to pursue one. That kind of conflict when arise to the animal, that kind of conflict, that kind of motivational conflict is known as approach conflict. Avoidance approach conflict is it occurs when an animal must choose between two undesirable opinions, that is facing a predator or leaving its territory. Both are important. Territory maintenance is important. Protection is important from the predator. So these are avoidance. So one has to avoid both the things, but which avoidance is faster, that depends on animal behavior. And third one is approach avoidance conflict, which explains when animal is attracted to and repelled by same stimulus, such as predator near food. That means food is there and nearer to the food, predator is there. Predator is repelling the organism because there is protection issue. Food is attracting the organism because there is love issue. Organism loving or affection towards the food, but it repel by the predator presence. So these are different motivational conflicts. And for that, decision making is very important, and organism also taking certain kind of decision that may be good, that may be bad, that is different, but decision making at that time is very essential. In response to motivational conflict, animals make decision based on weighing the relative importance. That means organism has to decide, has to interpret first what kind of problem is this. Then the organism has to decide the importance of this conflict. So decision making process often involve brain region like the prefrontal cortex in mammals, which integrates sensory information and emotional states. One example is cited here. The bird is facing a conflict between staying hidden from a predator and needing to leave its cover to feed, will make decision based on relative threat and hunger. So these are different kind of examples. Also, you can cite from different sources. These are the example, one or two examples for your understanding I am cited here. But these different kinds of motivational conflict you have to mention with certain examples. Displacement activity is another important part. What is the displacement activity? Displacement activity occurs when animal perform an unrelated or irrelevant behavior in response to conflict. So just look at this picture. Every day we are observing this kind of action performed by the dogs. Okay, so these are particularly related or irrelevant behavior sometimes the organism are performing. So what is the characteristic of this behavior? It typically involves the context such as grooming, yawning, and scratching. Sometimes they try to scratch their nails on the ground or any other objects. So why they are doing? They are very anxious when they are facing certain new things, unnatural things, or any kind of very novel things. They start this kind of activity. We are also doing. Our signage is one kind of this displacement activity. If we are facing a substance, if we are facing any kind of stimuli, immediately then we start reacting according to that stimuli, which is called as displacement activity. So we are performing different facial expressions, we are performing different body actions to respond that stimuli. So this is another important part, that is displacement activity. And this is final part of this hormonal regulation of behavior, how hormone is very essential for different kind of behavior. If we are talking about hormones, these are endocrine secretion. That means ductless secretion. Hormonal secretion is the ductless secretion. Hormones are chemical messengers that influence behavior by acting on nervous system. So both are coordinating system. Hormonal system as well as nervous system are the coordinating system. Everything is coordinated. Every function is coordinated by these systems. Okay. So what are the role of these hormones? First, hormonal control of reproductive behavior. We will talk about reproductive behavior. The secondary sexual characters, maintenance of secondary sexual characters, the arousal of sexual behavior, everything is maintained by the hormone. In case of male, testosterone; in case of female, it is estrogen, progesterone. So these are testosterone secreted by male primary sex organ, testis, and estrogen, progesterone secreted by female primary sex organ, that is ovary, and both are very influential in sexual behavior, sexual aggression, especially in male. Testosterone is very essential for this sexual behavior and aggression, but in case of female, estrogen and progesterone are very essential for maternal behavior, for maternal characteristics. So these have a tremendous role in organismal behavior, in mammalian behavior. Okay. The second one is hormonal influence on social behavior, that is oxytocin and vasopressin impact. Oxytocin, generally known as the love hormone, we know that at the time of parturition, parturition means baby birth. At the time of parturition, there is more secretion of oxytocin. Before parturition also secretion, but at the time of parturition and after parturition, there is more secretion of oxytocin, which is love hormone, and that love hormone promotes the binding between parents and offspring. If oxytocin secretion is not much, then the binding between mother and child is very less, will be very less. That is the impact of hormone. That's why oxytocin is known as love hormone. And if we'll talk about vasopressin, what is the animal behavior effect? That vasopressin maintains the social dominance and territorial behavior. That means we are the organism of this place, this territory. That thinking is brought due to the presence of vasopressin. Other actions also there. Vasopressin has very other functions in body, but this is the behavioral function, that vasopressin maintains the territorial behavior and social dominance. Next one is the hormone and stress related behavior. If we are talking about the stress, corticosteroid, cortisol and corticosterone both are secreted by adrenal gland. So these are the hormones. They are responsible for stress. If we are talking about fight, flight, and fight hormone, so this adrenal gland hormone are important role, because organism when fighting to other organism for its dominance, or any other kind, any other activity. If organism is in hunger, is in fear, everything that is regulated, that means organism in stress, that is regulated by different type of adrenocorticotropic hormone. And that adrenocorticotropic hormone activate our adrenal gland, which ultimately secrete adrenaline, noradrenaline, which is otherly known as epinephrine and norepinephrine. They have a tremendous action on our body behavior, or animal behavior is influenced by the secretion of this kind of hormones. This is the feedback mechanism. We have a positive feedback mechanism, we have a negative feedback mechanism. If hormone action is more, if we are talking about the sex hormones, if we are talking about the gonadotropic hormone, if testosterone secretion is more, testosterone secretion create an positive feedback on other parts where testosterone is acting. That means more and more production of what? Spermatozoa. But the ultimate secretion of testosterone moves a negative feedback on hypothalamus as well as pituitary. That means pituitary stops secreting the gonadotropic hormone. That means there is a symbol, there is a signal from the pituitary to the gonads to stop more and more secretion of testosterone, because testosterone function is its ultimate level. That's why to stop testosterone, that impact the negative feedback. So this feedback mechanism is very essential for animal behavior. These are different parts. So these all about different controls of behavior. I think everyone are getting certain idea about this kind of behavior and its regulating pattern. Okay, I'm moving to the next slide. The mating behavior. So mating behavior is the part of sexual selection. That means organism, male or female, that select its opposite sex for mating purpose, for the sexual reproduction purpose, for creating new organisms. What is the ultimate aim of every individual animal? Okay. So in the mating behavior pattern or the sexual selection, we'll discuss about certain things. First, we have to discuss about asymmetry of sexes. You know that male and female sexes are there. Generally, male and female sexes are there. So what is the asymmetry in these sexes pattern, male and female? What are the differences? The reproductive role of male and female often differ significantly, leading to an asymmetry of investment in reproduction. So both are contribute to reproduction, but both contribution is not equal. There is a difference. So that difference leads to asymmetry. So what are the different differences? Male typically invest less in individual offspring and often compete for access to female. That is the dominating nature due to different hormonal action. But female invest more heavily. That means more care from the female side in comparison to male side, and are typically more selective about their mates. But male do not have more selective nature like female. That is the asymmetry performed by male and female. Second one is the reproductive fitness. Reproductive fitness means what it refers? It refers to individual genetic contribution to next generation, whether organism is producing more or less organism. So this reproductive fitness, again I am repeating, what is reproductive fitness? Organism is surviving and producing next generation. That influence reproductive fitness. So the factors that influence reproductive fitness is number of offspring produced. Offspring means newborn, survival rate of offspring, and quality mate selected. If one organism is not selecting its quality mate, then it will produce very low quality offsprings. That means the survival rate will be very low, and number of offspring production also may or may not be low. That is the factors they influence the fitness. These are the pictorial presentation. In two picture, you can see the production of organism, children and grandchildren production. In one case, the children and grandchildren production is more from a parent, but in another case, the children and grandchildren production is less, which explains what reproductive success is more in right side and less is left in left side, which is termed as lower fitness and higher reproductive fitness, respectively. Okay, so these are reproductive fitness. Another important term is sexual dimorphism. We have to understand what is sexual dimorphism. If male and female are different morphologically, then we can call it as sexual dimorphism. That is dimorphic characters that displace male from female. That means that divide male and female into two other half. Okay, so sexual dimorphism refers to the differences in appearance between male and female. What I have told you, the morphological characteristic. The appearance means morphological characteristic. When we visualize the organism morphologically or in front of us, then we can separate those organisms. We can tell that this is male, this is female. Okay, so these are the dimorphic characteristics. So what kind of dimorphic characteristics, or in which manner we can find the dimorphic characteristic? The size differences are there. Male in certain organism often larger in species with male competition, while female might be larger in species with high reproductive investment. So these are different dimorphic characteristics. In some species, we can find larger male. In some species, we can find smaller males. Okay, but there is a dimorphic nature. Coloration, ornamentation, weaponry, everything. That means certain characteristics in male and female distinguish male from female. That is the dimorphism. Some pictures are in the right side. You can see here that male and female, how they are different. In certain amphibians, birds, fishes, mammals, and insects, male and female is here. You can visualize between male and female characteristic. Coloration variations are there, ornamentation variations are there, size variations are there. So these are different dimorphic characteristics. Mating system. Which kind of mating system generally we are finding in organisms, in animals? So these mating system are strategies animals use to maximize their reproductive success. So which kind of mating system they are following? Monogamy, polygamy, polyandry, and polygamy. Okay, so particularly these three important patterns, monogamy, polygamy, and polyandry, these are very important. Other mating patterns or mating systems are there. You can cite in your copy, but for discussion I am citing here only three important patterns. That is, monogamy means male mate with one female, one male, one female. That is the monogamy concept. Polygamy concept means a general term that includes both polygyny and polyandry. So first we have to understand what is polygyny and we have to understand what polyandry. Polygyny means one male mate with multiple female. That is the polygyny condition. polygyny. Poly means many, gyne means female. If one male mates with multiple female, that condition is polygyny condition. This is common in species where male compete for territory or status. Mainly lions, deers, they show this kind of polygyny condition. Polyandry condition, one female mate with multiple males, which is rare but occurs in species like certain birds. Okay, so this kind of condition also a part of animal behavior. So polygamy is the term which include both polygyny and polyandry. Okay, so where individual has multiple mates. So this is the condition. Here it is mentioned here the pictorial presentation polygamy that includes both polygyny as well as polyandry. Okay, so these are different pictures showing with organismal presentation. Now, in mating pattern, this is another important part, that is intrasexual selection, which is mainly termed as male rivalry. Okay, intrasexual selection means it occurs when individuals of the same sex compete with each other for mates. Generally, in wild organism, it is found male-male competition. That means male has to fight with other male in the herd for the mating purpose. That is male rivalry. Okay, so that mating purpose, why they are fighting in this manner? To express their dominance, often leads to the evolution of physical traits like larger body size, antlers, horns, increased aggressiveness to sources. Okay, so these are different kind of behavior they are showing, different kind of activities they are showing, and ultimately they start fighting with other male in that herd, in that group, to mate with the particular female. That is very important. Territory establishment is another purpose of this male rivalry. Males may compete to control a territory that attracts female. That means certain birds, they establish their territory, and this establishment of this territory attract certain female birds for mating purpose, which is also another important part of this study, mating behavior. Here, intersexual selection. Sexual selection means the attraction of mates to each other in order to gain traits that enhance species survival. Why there is selection? Why there is, if species is there, random mating is possible. But why there is a selection? Selection is due to both male and female. They want to produce fit offspring. That's why female mostly always need a fit male for production of more fit offspring. That is the basic aim of this sexual selection. So in case of female choice, intersexual selection is very essential. Female choice is very essential because female decide which kind of male is fit and which kind of male, or mating with which kind of male, can produce more fit offsprings. So it involves individual of one sex, usually particularly female, choosing mate based on both species specific traits. What is the mate preference here? Female often choose male based on traits like indicate good health, particularly body size, strength, genetic fitness. So these are very important. That is observed by the female for mating purpose. Runaway selection is what? Runaway selection explains something females develop a preference for extreme trait in males, which leads to the exaggeration of this trait over generation. Peacock's tail is a good example of this part. The peacock, which can or the peacock which has a large tail. That is the characteristic feature attracted by the female, or the female choose that kind of peacock with a large tail. That is the sexual behavior. That is the female choice. That kind of choice leads to formation of fittest offspring in next generation. That is important for organismal survivability as well as that stop organismal extinction in different kind of environmental change condition. So this is all about the sexual behavior. All of you, I think, clear about sexual behavior. Different points I have cited sexual behavior. Am I audible now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So next part is the social behavior and altruism. So first we will discuss about social behavior that encompass the interaction among individuals of same species that affect each other's survival and reproduction. That means interdependency, particularly in a society. If we are living, if we have interdependency, then it is good for us. That is the main aim of this social behavior. And what is altruism? In brief, we can explain the altruism is a behavior that benefits other at a cost to the individual performing the behavior is a key concept in social behavior studies. That means how cooperative organism with other social organism of its same kind or to its different kind. That is the altruism. Detail we'll study in latter part. Okay. So first we'll move to next slide. What is sociality in animal system? Different types of sociality, advantages of sociality, and its disadvantages. So what is sociality in animal system? It refers to degree to which individual in an animal population associate and cooperate with each other in groups. So the types of sociality: solitary, subsocial, and eusocial. Solitary means when organism prefer to live and act mostly alone. The larger organisms like tiger, leopards, they prefer to act, they prefer to live alone. That kind of social activity is known as solitary social activity. Subsocial activity means minimal interaction, usually between parents and offsprings. Spider, some fish after spawning, they do not have any interaction with the mother for certain time, but very limited interactions are there. So this kind of social behavior is known as subsocial category, and eusocial category, highly organized society. Honeybee society, ant society is the highly organized society where there is division of labor, where there is cooperative brood care. That means organism is taking care of its egg, organism is taking care of its young one. So this kind of activity are known as eusocial organismal activity. Okay. So these are the sociality, different kinds of sociality. Organismal behavior is different according to this sociality. Okay. So what are the advantages of this sociality? The advantages: if social organisms, if group is there, that increase the protection. When organism is living in groups, that provide safety in numbers, with more individual available to detect predator. If you are standing alone, predator can attack from backside, from lateral side. But if you are in a group, then more eyes are there. you have only 2 eyes, but if you are in a group, then more eyes are there for mitigating or for confronting with the obstacles. So this is the first advantage. Foraging efficiency, that means animal can cooperate in hunting or food gathering, increasing success. Single organismal hunting and in a group hunting. Yesterday we have discussed about the group hunting of wolf, how they are getting success after group hunting. That is another advantage. And also reproductive success. Group living can enhance reproductive success opportunity, particularly for eusocial organisms. If organism in a group, then there is a chance of mating with female, more chance of mating with more females, more chance of mating with more males. So if chance of mating with more organism, that means reproductive success is more. If organism is solitary, then might not, there is a chance of mating, because every time organism unable to get its female partner, that means there is less reproductive success, less production of organism. That is very important. Or advantages of sociality. What are the disadvantages? If sociality is more, that means more number of organisms present in the society, that obviously leads to more competition. More competition means more struggle for existence. Okay, so that is the disadvantage. And spread of disease. When we are talking about a communicable disease, just we have witnessed a communicable disease like COVID-19. So COVID-19, what explains? Where there was ban at the time of COVID-19, where the place was crowded. Because when more organisms are residing or more footprint is there in that place, more chances of infection due to this communicable disease. So that is the disadvantage of this sociality. These are different pictures. The social organisms. Now we'll go for the cooperation and conflict in animals. Social organisms, they have cooperations, they have to cooperate with each other. They also have certain conflicts. So first we have to understand what is cooperation. When two or more organisms work together for a common benefit, that is called as cooperation. Just look at this picture. This shows the cooperative manner. If food is at this side, organismal presence at this side, then it is difficult for a single organism to get that food. But in group, they make a line. They make a bridge by which they can get this side of food. Okay, that is very important aspect. That is the advantage of this cooperation. Okay, so cooperative hunting in lions or dolphin, where individuals work together to catch prey. That is another advantage we often see in National Geographic Channel. Single animal hunting and cooperative animal hunting. What is the difference? Basic difference: in cooperative hunting, more chances of food in cooperative hunting. Okay, sometimes in case of single hunting, the animal get affected by the prey. After that, the condition is conflict condition. What is conflict condition? It arises when interest of individual class. If we are talking about the ego class, that means our ego is classing. When interest is classing, that is known as conflict. So conflict arises when interest is classing. That means if a source is there, common source is there, organisms are fond of this source. That means there is an interest of organism. And both the organisms of same group are very fond of this source, this object. That time, there is chance of this conflict. So conflict may be of two types: intra-group and intergroup conflict. We can also use the word intraspecific as well as interspecific conflict. Intra-group conflict is the competition within social groups for dominance or reproductive rights, particularly when male primates fighting for access to female. That kind is known as intra-group conflict. For sexual selection purpose, most male primates, they fight with each other to mate with the female, the particular female. When we are talking about intergroup conflict, the competition between different groups or colonies for territory or resources. So chimpanzee group fighting over territory. Different groups of chimpanzees in different territory, if they are fighting, that kind is known as intergroup conflict. Okay. When we are talking about intraspecific and interspecific, if conflict is within the species, that is intraspecific conflict. If conflict is within different species, that means if a conflict between lion and tiger, that conflict is known as interspecific conflict. Okay. So what is the resolution of this conflict? Dominance hierarchies, establishment of social ranking, hierarchical position, establishment of hierarchical position. Who is dominant? That is very important. Okay. So these are essential factors regarding cooperation and conflicts in animals. We'll move to next slide. So these are certain pictorial presentation in different organismal group, interspecific group, intraspecific group. So this picture shows us that there is a conflict. Okay. Now, another important aspect is social organization and behavior pattern of honeybees. So different caste system is present in honeybee. It is very well known to us. Queen is there, worker is there, drones are there. Okay. So queen is for egg laying purpose, workers, non-reproductive, female that perform all tasks necessary to maintain the hive. They are also female, but sterile female. They develop the sterility during their development. They do not eat the royal jelly. They only provide the royal jelly to the one female which converted to queen, and drones are the male, the haploid males. Okay, they are for mating purpose only. No other functions performed by this drone in honeybee colony. So these are different caste of honeybees. The pictures of different queen, drone, and worker here. You can see the pictures. The social cooperation. What is the social cooperation? In honeybee, division of labor is the first social cooperation. That means different organisms are meant for different work. Only the female drones, the female workers, they are meant for collecting the food. They are meant for different protective activity, guarding the hive. All these are the functions performed by the workers. That is a part of labor. Okay. Next, for reproductive purpose, only the males are there. They do not have other purpose or function. They do not perform other function. They only eat certain things and they perform the reproduction at the time. And after that, they become dead. And the queen, at the royal animal of this group, they are meant for egg laying. They are meant for producing more and more number of offsprings, which converted to male drone and female worker. So these are division of labor. That is the social cooperation is present in case of honeybee colony. Communication is the waggle dance. Yesterday we have also discussed about different kind of dancing pattern of honeybee. Sometimes they are performing circling dancing pattern. Sometimes they are performing waggle pattern of dancing. If food is nearer to the hive, they are performing circling pattern of dancing. If food is far away, they have to perform the waggle pattern of dancing. So this is for communication purpose. they communicate with other workers that there is the source of food. We have to collect food from this source. And the next communication pattern is the next cooperation pattern is the defense. Worker defend the colony using their stinger and sacrificing themselves to protect the hive. It means they fight with other predators, they fight with other enemies, and they also sacrifice their life to protect their hive. That is different kind of cooperation present in honeybee colony. Okay, so now the next part of this chapter we'll discuss about this, which is called as altruism. Altruism is very essential part, very important part of this animal behavior. What it refers to behavior that reduce fitness of individual performing the act while benefiting other. It means if I am here to help you, that means I am harming myself. That means I am reducing my fitness for the sake of yours. That is the main aim of altruism. Okay, so for altruism, we have to understand different mechanism of this altruism. The first one is group selection. In altruism, animals are altruistic in nature. So for that, group selection is very essential. What is that group selection? Natural selection can act on groups, favoring behaviors that benefit the survival and reproduction of the group, even at a cost of individual. So that is the group selection. Chimpanzees with food will, in response to gesture, share their food with other of the group. Okay. So what is the example actually tells us? Chimpanzees, in general sense, they help their elder one, the old chimpanzees in the group, which are unable to collect food, which are unable to eat properly. The other chimpanzees in the group, they help in feeding. They help in feeding means they cut their own feeding amount. They help the other. That is the part of altruism. So in altruism, we have to discuss about kin selection. Otherwise, it will not completed. The altruism is not completed. What is kin selection? It explains what? Kin selection is a theory in evolutionary biology that explains how cooperation and altruism evolve in animal societies. So cooperation and altruism unitedly form the kin selection. It's a type of natural selection that occurs when an animal behaves in a way that helps its close relative produce, even if it comes to cost of its life. That means if we are talking about the insect societies, the beehives, the example shows the definition. The beehives, the female workers, despite their life, they sacrifice their life for the sake of the group, for the advancement, for the protection of the group. That is the kin selection pattern. What it explains? Kin selection explains the individual tend to favor others with whom they share a high proportion of gene. That means they fight with other organism or their same group. High proportion, they share high proportion of gene means they fight for their same group. That is the explanation. This was first proposed by W.D. Hamilton in 1963. So this is the kin selection. What Hamilton's rule explains here, just you have to explain that rule. Hamilton's rule explains altruism is favored by natural selection. If we are discussing about Hamilton's rule. It's a principle in evolutionary biology that predicts when altruistic acts are advantageous. What is the altruistic act? Altruistic act here, two letters or the combination of two letters are there. One is R, small r, another is capital B. It is written that small r into capital B or combination of small r into capital B is always greater than C. Small r for relatedness, capital B for benefits to the recipient. Always the relatedness and benefit to the recipient. That means if the organism is trying to help other means towards the relatives and for their benefit, that always more in altruistic mechanism than the cost of life or than the cost of altruistic. That means who is helping, it doesn't care about his life. Always its help is greater than its life meaning. Okay, so this all about the Hamilton's rule, which is explaining how altruistic organisms are. Okay, so here another important part is there, inclusive fitness, that explains an individual's genetic success is not just measured by personal reproduction but also by the reproduction of relatives who share their genes. That is another important behavior. That means we should not have selfish for ourselves. That is not the genetic success. If single organism's reproductive success is more, that doesn't mean that organisms or the whole group is in reproductive success. Reproductive success means the same organismal reproductive success along with other organismal of that group. If the reproductive success is more, they can produce more number of organisms. That is inclusive fitness. Okay, this is the part. And the last part of this chapter is reciprocal altruism. In the previous part, altruism, when organism is helping other organism that do not expect any return, without any return, that help other organism. But reciprocal altruism means organism is helping other organism, but in other sense, it receive, it expects some return gift from that organism. Okay, so for that, memory, repeated interactions, cheater detection, everything it perform, but it receives, it expects certain gifts. When we are talking about the bat, vampire bat, it engages in reciprocal altruism by sharing blood meals with others, but it ensures in future the others will help him when he need it. That is the reciprocal altruism. Okay, so very interesting behavioral patterns are there, found in organismal group. So this all about the altruism, kin selection, and at last we'll share another slide which is on parental care. Within short span of time, I have to cover that parental care. Parental care means investment by a parent in an individual of offspring that increases the offspring's chance of survival. One parent is taking care means the parent want that baby will survive after parturition. That is parental care. Okay. So what kinds of parental care, what types of parental care generally we can find? One is prenatal care. That means before the birth, we have to taking care of our child. Animal has to taking care of its child. Okay, its offspring, its embryo, everything we can say. That kind is known as parental care, prenatal care. Okay. So when gestation period is continuing, gestation period means from the zygote production to the parturition. The intermediate period is gestation period. When mammal is in gestation period, if care is taken by mother, then that is called as prenatal care. Okay, the mother is eating good foods, the mother is protecting towards its child, that is prenatal care of the mother. Postnatal care, after parturition, what kind of care is taking place? That is postnatal care. That means care provided after birth, after parturition or hatching. That kinds is known as postnatal care. Certain pictorial presentation of postnatal care is present on your screen. You can see, you can observe. So postnatal care can be of two types. One is direct care, which includes feeding, protection, grooming, and teaching. Indirect care, it involves creating a safe environment, building a nest, providing resources like food. All these are the indirect care for postnatal care part. Okay. When we are building a house, it doesn't mean that it is for our children or anything, but indirectly our children is getting or are getting benefits from this house. Okay, so this kind of effect are coming under the indirect effect of postnatal care. One is biparental care. Biparental care means when two parents are involved, that means both male and female, they are involved in caretaking. That is biparental care. Okay. Most organisms like penguins, both the parents are involved in taking care of the baby. That is biparental care. In certain birds, biparental care also found. Uniparental care, only one parent, usually the mother or father, provides care, either mother or father. In certain organisms, they provide the care. That kind of care is known as uniparental care. And no parental care, that means there is no parental care for the offspring. When we are talking about the fishes and amphibians, after spawning, the mother or father or any of the parents, they are swimming to any other place. That means after egg laying, they are leaving the place. They do not take care of these parents, but after hatching, the amphibians and fishes, they turn into adults with self-care. That means in certain cases, we can see that the fishes are not good mothers because of this property. So in that pattern, no parental care is found. Okay. So this is another peculiar behavior of this parental care. Here, important term is there, parental manipulation. What is that parental manipulation? It refers to the strategies employed by parents to alter the behavior or physiology of their offspring to enhance the pattern or fitness. So in first example, we can see some bird species, parents may preferentially feed larger or stronger offspring. Okay, so these are the manipulation, parental manipulation. They neglecting the other offsprings. They only choose the fit offspring and they give more food first to the fit offspring, which leading to the competition among the siblings and possible death of weaker ones. That is the kind of parental manipulation. Okay, which is known as siblicide. Siblicide is simply, you can describe, siblicide means when parent choose and provide food to the more larger, stronger offspring, there is a competition among the siblings. And the competition leads to what? Leads to death of other weaker categories. That is the first example, first manipulation category. In second, some insect manipulate the sex ratio of their offspring to maximize reproductive success, producing more female when conditions are favorable. So they try to produce a particular kind of offspring. That is also another manipulation. Generally, manipulation means you have to make a misbalance between the offspring and its survival. Okay, so these are different parental manipulation. This can involve the trade-off between the fitness of the current offspring and parents' future reproductive output. Okay, so this is a evolutionary stable strategies, the commonly abbreviated as ESS in parental care. What is that ESS? It is adapted when adapted by a population cannot be invaded by an alternative strategy because it yields the highest fitness payoff. Okay, so examples can show uh, the strategy. I think we should stop here. From the next class, we'll continue and try to complete this chapter and the next part. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Those who have doubts, they can directly, again, I'm telling my WhatsApp number 8280039012. You can directly contact to me for your doubts, because it is very obvious that within a stipulated time we have to cover a lot. I'm trying my best to make a collaborative study. So I think you people will understand, and definitely I'll go through your doubts. Just pin me in WhatsApp or directly you can call me for your doubts. Okay. So we'll I think time is over. We'll stop here. Have good night to all.
Good night, sir.
Very good.
Thank you.
Good night, sir. Good night.
Sir, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Good night.